No, it's a separate link, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Did you hear that, Mike? You'll have to join a separate link for the next meeting.
That's up. Perfect.
Hey, Dylan.
Yeah, that's good.
I was gonna say when they come on.
When does it start?
There is some.
Yep.
Did you want to put some on the tape? Sure. I have like a little agenda out there.
No?
It's not.
Do it.
Before, early enough to.
I'm just getting the bill.
You're right.
You know what? We'll just get started. Let's just give ourselves some time. You're good? Okay, we're gonna call this special meeting to order. It's Monday, February 10th, 5:45. We do have a quorum. I'm sure Mr. O'Brien will be joining us in just a moment. Mr. Henrik is remote due to illness. So I think we're just gonna move right into speaking with Ms. Broderick from CAVE to discuss the focus group sessions regarding the superintendent search.
Yes, the overall profile for the leadership profile for the superintendency of school. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. As you know, the selection of the superintendent is the most important thing a Board of Education can do. And I know that you were very anxious to hear from a broad cross-section of the community through interviews, focus groups, and the survey, which was offered both in English and in Spanish. And there were 13 focus groups in all, which was more than anticipated. We ended up adding a couple for a variety of reasons. And then the survey was conducted between January 15th and 31st. I'd just like to take a moment to thank everybody who participated in that process.
Sorry.
Hi there, Bill. And also to thank Teresa and Heather for their help in getting the word out about the opportunity to participate. So I'm on page 3 of the report in front of you now, and in total you had 416 participate in this data collection between the survey and the focus groups. That may not sound like a lot in a very big community, but that is up among the higher participation rates that you tend to see in this kind of thing. And it's a nice cross-section, as you can see, in terms of the interviews and focus groups. 40% were parents or guardians or community members. 16% were administrators, 15% were teachers, 12% community leaders, and you can see the rest. And then in terms of the survey, 45% were parents, so parents and guardians. 21% were teachers. 15% just about were community residents. And then 6% administrators and non-certified and support staff, and so on. You did have a few students participating, but not a huge number. So what did I hear from all of them? The strengths it was really kind of amazing how consistent the responses were in terms of the strengths. Clearly, the schools in Stratford are the heart of the community. 144 participants talked about teachers, administrators, and support staff being the strength of the schools. Where teachers go above and beyond, they have unwavering dedication and passion for their students' success. Support staff, administrators, and custodians maintain a positive and nurturing school environment and prioritize student needs. Administrators foster a culture of collaboration and continuous improvement. And overall, the educators in this community have a growth mindset and are open to learning new teaching methods to help students learn. 131 of your participants talked about diversity and inclusion being a great strength of Stratford. It's really celebrated here, the breadth of cultural backgrounds, and in all kinds of ways there's diversity in this community. It's neighborly, the community is neighborly and connected, and there's a strong and engaged public that really values education. The community blends seamlessly, maintaining that small town feel. You tell me if I'm going too slowly for you or if this is the right pace. Teachers and administrators reflect the diversity of the town, although you know sometimes you will hear things as a strength and then you'll hear the same thing as a challenge. So understand that happens. People have different perspectives. 108 people mentioned community involvement and support as a strength. You have a really wonderful culture of collaboration in this community, as you know. It's a defining strength, I would say. And it just reinforces that sense of belonging and unity. You have, now there's a huge decline in number of mentions now. Those areas that I've already talked about were by far the most mentioned, and you'll see you go from 108 mentions to 29. So this is a much smaller number of people who talked about the strength of the curriculum and educational opportunities. They talked of extracurricular activities, music, arts, STEM, innovative teaching methods, and hands-on learning experience that keep kids engaged. Social and emotional and student well-being had 17 mentions, and people talked about schools prioritizing mental health and emotional well-being. 17 people mentioned, everybody keeping up with me? Okay, communication and engagement with 17 mentions, same as the one before. They talked about regular newsletters, district updates, parent-teacher conferences, and how that fosters trust and collaboration. So those are what participants identified as the strengths of the schools, and now we'll go on to the challenges. The schools face a variety of challenges. Number one, with 100 mentions, I know you're gonna be shocked, budget. Budget and funding issues. Persistent financial deficits, inadequate funding for essential resources such as special ed, curriculum improvement, and school infrastructure. There's also concern about what happens with federal grants, just not knowing what's coming. So especially my later focus groups, people were raising that as a concern. The next area was, again, I just mentioned there were 17 who said this is a strength. There were 59 who had some issues with curriculum and academic performance. There were concerns that the current curriculum doesn't adequately prepare students for college and career opportunities, and would like to see greater rigor and raised expectations. And one person talked about the literacy gap and her concern that that is a social justice issue. People were talking about wanting to see more advanced coursework, STEM education, vocational training, and programs that really help students be prepared for a college career and the evolving technological workspace. And some are afraid that some recent changes may have been ineffective. There is a concern about a new leader coming in and changing things, and we'll get into that in a minute, but they want any changes to be really thoughtful about what it's doing to the staff and the delivery of the program. So integration of technology is a concern. Educators and students need guidance. People didn't feel that the tools were necessarily maximized, and that they need guidance in knowing how to be effective and prudent in the way those tools are used. There were 57 participants who talked about leadership and governance as an issue. First of all, mentioned the instability in district leadership and the lack of permanent superintendent. They also talked about a hyper-political environment within the board that has made discussions about educational issues more polarized. The term limits don't help in terms of the every 2-year turnover at half or almost half the board. And there's a concern that divisiveness has hindered collaboration. So that's something that I think a new leader needs to be aware of and needs to help figure out ways to get the board working cohesively. 55 people talked about student behavior and discipline being an issue, with some extremely disruptive student behaviors that have an impact on teachers, on fellow students, on administrators, and the lack of clear consequences for misbehavior. They felt that the schools have to ensure that the policies that govern discipline are both effective and are consistent in the way they're upheld in order for the learning environment to feel safe for people. Then there were 49 mentions of teacher retention, morale, and resources. It's funny because that again was mentioned as a great strength. People talked a lot about teacher retention, and yet again, others felt that it is a concern that there are challenges retaining high quality teachers and staff because salaries are on the low side, they're uncompetitive, and the growing workloads. That's true everywhere. Educators talked about feeling undervalued and overburdened, which contribute to high levels of burnout. There were some, and this is pretty true everywhere, that there are some in the community who will talk about top-heavy administration. So that definitely came up among some. And although, again, this was considered a strength, some felt that the diversity is lacking in their staff ranks. We know you have made some improvements there, but there is still concern that the staff doesn't sufficiently reflect the students. 29 mentions of special ed and support services. A number of people felt that families requiring special ed services weren't having their children's needs met. And then they felt there should be a stronger commitment to individualized learning plans and having the appropriate resources. Of course, you come back to budget there too. There were 26 people who talked about parent and community engagement. Again, what many saw as a great strength, but there is a strong desire for that wonderful collaboration you have to be that much stronger between schools, parents, and the broader community. Along those lines, they felt many parents would be more involved all the time, not just at budget time, if they felt that the superintendent and board were actively listening. And so the next mention, with 24 mentions, was diversity, equity, and inclusion, and again, a huge strength for you. But people felt that, again, there were both opportunities and challenges as a result of your diversity. One pointed out that with a student population that's approximately 73% students of color in a town that's about 75% white, you want to make sure that there are equitable resources for the students' education. 16 mentioned redistricting and school assignments and felt that they were not satisfied with how the process evolved. This is probably, I get the feeling you've been hearing about this a little bit. So people mentioned concerns that decisions were made without sufficient community input and that transparency was lacking throughout the process. So, obviously it's a complex and challenging position, but these are the challenges that people identified that your new leader is going to be confronted with. Okay, so what would they like to see in a new leader? Okay, the first 2 pages here are really strictly out of the survey, okay? People selected their top choices for qualities that they felt were most important in a new leader. And you'll see in terms of expertise, I broke it down both by people's first choice and their top 3 choices. And the first choice, number 1, was building trusting relationships with students, staff, and community, and that was 18.3%. The second first choice was communicates and collaborates effectively in the school and community. And then the third has experience running a school district. And if you look at the top choices, that changes a good bit. Still first, but much closer to the next, is the building trusting relationship, followed immediately by communicates and collaborates effectively. And then a little bit distance from that is a track record of success improving performance, and then strong budget and finance skills, and then experience running a school district as in a really 5th place, but they were close enough that I felt that they all deserved your attention there. In terms of qualities people wanted to see, far and away, the top first choice was keeping student growth and well-being the primary focus. It's so easy to get distracted by all the other concerns of running a complicated organization, but if that is at the core of the decision-making, that's what people want to see. At 27.7%. They want somebody who's accessible, approachable, and visible in the schools and community at 21.5%, tied with trustworthy, honest, and respectful at 21.5%. And those are the top 3 choices as well, in the same order for the top 3. Any questions about all that? Okay. Okay. So, what are you really looking for? You're looking for somebody who can be a visionary leader who seeks first to really understand the rich history of Stratford, and while embracing its evolving future. This role is going to require somebody with courage, somebody with an open mind, and a collaborator, and somebody who's able to honor Stratford's traditions and its aspirations. And in terms of building trusting relationships, they want the leader to be present and engaged and deeply invested in the well-being of every student, parent, and educator. Somebody who's going to expand Stratford's culture of collaboration, bridge gaps between administrators, parents, and students, unite the school system, the community, and foster an environment where kids thrive. They want somebody who is a transparent and visionary communicator, who understands the direction of the district and is in meaningful dialogue with teachers and families and the community. Able to build coalitions, community partnerships, build on the tremendously strong ones that you have, and leverage resources that are going to, especially given what are likely a trend in reductions in resources, to just make sure that you're making those collaborations to really support student learning. They want somebody who is moving past, who's going to be working on student literacy and performance and setting high expectations. Taking time, this is one of the things I've heard so strongly, is take the time to really understand what works before implementing change. Really don't come in, teachers are so done with a leader coming in and foisting change on them without kind of walking together with them, figuring out what's working, and then together coming up with solutions that might improve performance. They want somebody who understands financial complexities of running a school district, a creative problem solver who can navigate challenges such as the potential loss of federal funds, who's going to ensure that Stratford schools remain financially stable through what could be pretty unstable times. We'll see. Experience running a school district, I don't think this means your candidates all have to have been superintendents, but that might be an asset if somebody does. Again, they want the leader to take time to understand the unique challenges of bridging, and they talk about the older and the newer communities, sort of your newer communities reflecting the greater diversity of the student body and people who've been here for generations, understanding those dynamics, and supporting the diverse populations, adapting to the evolving educational landscape, and aligning any new initiatives with the district's needs rather than just disrupting what works. That's what people are afraid of, that disruption. People talked about seeing every Stratford child as their own, concerned about the well-being and growth as the top priorities, prioritizing literacy, mental health, inclusive learning environments, and that every student should feel supported. Somebody who is accessible, approachable, and visible, who would spend time, a lot of time, in the schools and community, especially before launching any major initiatives. Listening first, engaged in daily operations, leading with kindness, humility, and transparency. And then with integrity, making decisions, prioritizing students, respecting staff, and strengthening the community. Communicate decisions clearly and consistently so everybody understands why you're doing what you're doing. Ensuring that changes are intentional, well-planned, and beneficial to student learning. And fostering a culture where respect, honesty, and collaboration shape the future for the students of the community. So ultimately, the leader has to inspire hope, that shared vision, drive excellence, and create an inclusive, thriving educational environment, and walk on water. So what's going to happen with this now? This document will guide your selection of people you'd like to interview, will help you in thinking about questions you'd like to ask candidates so that you can learn whether they match, and in your selection process. So that's how we'll take advantage of this. And now I just ask if you have any questions at all about this. Does it sound like your community?
I feel like it's very general, which is fine. That's what I expected people to come back with this kind of information. My question to you is, since you've done many of these searches before, what is different about this than what you've seen from others?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of the things people want to see in a leader are consistent, but your community is unusual. I think that your level of collaboration is unusual. I think there are a number of communities that do celebrate diversity the way you do, but it is so striking when every group identifies the diversity of the community as one of its greatest assets. So that is a little different. There was articulation here that I haven't really heard about the disruption of, yes, nobody wants somebody coming in and bulldozing people with their changes because they've been successful with those in the past someplace else. There was a depth of love for the community, love for kids, real, I think there's just a real passion of wanting to see this work and thinking that the right person could really help you to take off. What is really, what's really different? I think those really are the major differences. And there's nuance in here. I know what you're saying. Everybody wants somebody who builds trusting relationships.
Right.
Everybody wants somebody who is a good communicator. And yet, I think that through some of the comments, you learn a more nuanced understanding of what that means. One of your participants talked about how do you ensure that a leader who feels like they have a mandate to come in and do something different, to improve, to get out of alliance status, and yet people don't want that to happen too fast. They want you to understand what is, why it is first. So there was that kind of articulation that I think leads to questions, right? That you can explore with candidates.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Broderick?
Just a comment.
Sure.
So it almost sounds to me like the exact person we want would be identical to acting superintendent head board. Just all the criteria they come up with is criteria that she currently displays. After a year and a half, she's done stuff. So I guess we could, use her as a role model to who we might want.
Are there any other comments? Questions? Okay.
All right, so next step is the deadline is, I think the 21st for your applicants. So we'll be meeting
What's that
after.
deadline?
The applicant deadline is the 21st.
February?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure
How are we
that's it.
doing with applicants right now?
You have, I have to caution you that I usually don't talk about that publicly.
Yeah.
But they do usually come in toward the end, but you're doing okay.
Okay, just probably.
Great. So we'll see you in a few weeks.
We will see you in a few weeks.
Great,
Thank you very much.
thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Can I
Thanks,
get a
Ryan.
motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll hang around for the finance meeting a little bit.